Hey guys, good morning. I just sent a text to my friends, Tim Grimes, channel link below, Cecilia Hendricks, channel link below, about this topic, because I've just been thinking about it this morning, and I figured I should just make a video about it, because this is one of those nuanced topics. This is one of those nuanced parts of the whole manifestation process that I think seems maybe a lot simpler than it actually is, and I just wanted to talk about it and why I think that for a lot of people it's going to be really appropriate to just kind of follow typical good life advice for a while if you haven't been doing that, to get some success in a more typical character building kind of way, so that you are more able to work with sort of the idea that you can bring something into your existence almost magically, like very effortlessly, that kind of thing. So what I was just saying to Tim and Cecilia is, as a successful person in general, in business specifically, and also, as I've mentioned on here many times, in 2018, thanks to a big mental shift and a lot of discipline, lost in the 80-pound range in under a year. So those things were brought about largely by having the right mentality. The steps of my business coming about happened fairly seamlessly thanks to intention, manifestation. That was definitely something that was created using the idea of manifestation the entire way. So one of the things that I really developed throughout that time was discipline, which what discipline means to me when I use that word is, it's when you do something consistently to get a result, even if you don't feel like it. So if you wake up tomorrow and you don't feel like going to the gym and your goal is to, drop X amount of weight, you do it anyway. That's how I did it the first time around. If anybody's been watching my channel for any significant period of time, then you know that in the middle of 2020, I set the intention to be completely free of everything mentally having to do with weight. Like all of the fucked up garbage that I picked up as a result of being a child in the 80s and 90s, coming of age in the 80s and 90s. And all of the just really unhealthy and largely untrue ideas that were pervasive during that time, and in the 70s and 60s and 50s when my mom was coming of age and becoming an adult, and all the things that she passed on to me about how unacceptable it was to have an ounce of fat on your body or any of that stuff. I in mid 2020, I was in the best shape of my life after just having gone through this whole process of getting there finally, thanks to identifying with, getting rid of some major beliefs that were just completely blocking that state from manifesting. Thanks to that, having just gone through all that, I'm sitting there in the best shape of my entire life, and I was still in the mentality of, I can't have an ounce of fat on my body. I have to look perfect. All this stuff, So I manifested the outer reality, and the inner state was still not anywhere near being peaceful and transformed. And I didn't really realize that that wasn't just going to happen from manifesting the 3D outer. So anyway, that's just a recap for somebody who's new to this channel. In June 2020, I realized what I need is to be free from this, not to have an external appearance that conforms to this fucked up idea that I have. I need the fucked up idea to shift into whatever its ideal form would be, and then I can do whatever I want with my appearance, because altering your appearance, manipulating your outer appearance it's not that difficult. And a lot of it is your own perception anyway. I know people don't, it's hard to connect to that, but a lot of how you view your looks, if not everything, has to do with your perception of that and what you think it should be and all of that. And one of the nuances that's really, I think, tough to figure out is, what do I want and what have I been programmed to want? Because it can be really hard to tell the difference between those two things. Most people are programmed to want what society has programmed you to want. So when I look in the mirror, it's really hard to tell, do I like what I'm seeing there, or do I like it because, do I genuinely like it, or do I like it because what I see conforms to an image in my mind of what society has deemed as acceptable. So, but that's, I guess, probably another topic for another time. As a result of that intention, a series of events in my life played out that I could not possibly have predicted, really. I mean, there were a few things that I didn't know that I would have to regain weight in order to undo all of these judgments. It seems obvious now. You know what I mean? It seems obvious now that if I really wanted to be okay, I would have to get okay in the circumstances that I was not okay in. I mean, that seems obvious now, but at the time I was like, oh, this will just, rectify itself somehow with me still sitting in this weight that conforms to everything that's fucked up for me. So the series of events that I had actually, prior to any of this happening, I had sat one night and thought, I wonder what, if anything, could drag me back to the old place where I weighed 80 pounds more than this. I thought, I don't think anything could do that. I felt really in control of everything. I was really happy with how I looked for the most part. And I just thought, I don't think there's anything that could cause me to go back to weighing, close to 200 pounds. And I was like, but, there are some scenarios that could come up. I was running through everything. I was like, I don't think a breakup could do it. That's just not triggering enough for me, or whatever. That's just not something that would make me lose control over things. Or, I don't know. The only thing I could come up with that was an event that was so chaotic and crazy that I thought it could potentially screw with my mind to the point that, it was something I couldn't really imagine, was my father getting sick. I thought about this in February of 2020, and I thought, really the only situation that could arise would be if he got sick far away because of our relationship and the weird kind of distance. It's like we're close, but we're super distant, if that makes any sense. Like, I know I could rely on him, but there's a huge, we're miles apart inside, to quote Poison. And he lives so far away, and he's very tight-lipped about anything that's going on with him physically, so potentially he could surprise me out of nowhere with the fact that he has cancer or something, and then I, being his only daughter, would feel very much, it falls on me to go take care of him. He wasn't married. He lived in kind of a shithole, very much of a shithole apartment, and I just thought, man, that could really be crazy. Just all these factors. I thought, that could be crazy, but I still don't think that would cause me to somehow just revert back to my old self. Well, it didn't, but that did happen. That exact scenario happened 7 months later, or 9 months later, to be exact. He did, in fact, and it was way more chaotic and insane than I could have possibly imagined in that little thought process I went through earlier that year. So that actually didn't cause me to lose control of myself. It was after he died that a whole bunch of shit about my relationship with him came up, and I experienced a bunch of regret and self-loathing and all this other stuff that caused me to experienced the strangest thing I've ever experienced in my life, which was, like, I would say to my fiance, I don't want to eat anything right now. I'm not hungry. It doesn't sound good. And yet I know within 60 minutes, I am going to be driving to the grocery store and buying a bunch of shit and just eating it. It was just happening. And the whole time this horrifying thing was happening, because almost nothing had changed in my mind about this problem, this self-image issue, all the ideas that were buried in there that I couldn't come up with even if I wanted to, all these things that had to come out and be fixed. As this was happening and I was experiencing just the horror of watching myself gain, I think I gained about 20 pounds after my dad died. And I had already kind of like circumstantially gained another 10 pounds thanks to COVID and meeting my fiance and eating a lot of pizza with him. And then just, actually didn't gain any weight while I was taking care of my dad, amazingly. But yeah, as this happened, it was horrifying. I was judging myself, it was horrible. All this stuff was coming up, and I watched myself gain exactly up to, it stopped at a point that makes perfect sense. Like I didn't go back, I didn't gain 80 pounds. I gained probably, a total of 30 over 2020. Just back to the point where I was not, just miserable, where I had to deal with all of these thoughts. I had to change my mind about all of it. And thank God, as this horrifying situation was playing itself out for me, I was thinking, okay, I know I intended, this has to be a part of that, because it's just so bizarre. I don't want to be doing this. And seems like it's just happening to me almost. So throughout that whole thing, I was like, I hate this. I hate this so much. I hate everything that's going on. I'm hating this experience, but it has to be in service of this larger intention. So that happened. And then that was 2021, in the middle of 2021. For 2 years after that, I just sat there in limbo, with my mind constantly on trying to fix it, trying to instead of that was where I really I feel sort of failed in a way. I don't know if I could have done anything better, but I didn't, eventually, after just continuously being unable, because I was 50% in, 50% out. Every time I would try to do something to rectify the problem, half of me would be like, come on, let's just get this done. Let's just fix this. And the other half of me would be like, no, I'm not doing this again. We already did this. It didn't work. It didn't go to the place you wanted to go to. You intended for something different. No. So it was just treading water for 2 years. A bunch of shit happened this year that got everything moving again, that started to really clean things out. And this has been a really interesting insight into the difference between human laziness, doing things in a disciplined fashion, and then having a clear enough mind about the topic at hand that you can push both of those things aside and only follow the impulses that are leading you effortlessly somewhere. And that's what I've been doing for the last few months. And I can't tell you how effortless it is. It hasn't required any discipline. In fact, when I felt the impulse to do something that would require discipline, most of the time, I don't do it. Because at this point, it's starting to reveal itself to me that in the right state, you don't need that. And so somebody who works for me just came out, and it's been revealed to this person now that I make videos in my car sometimes while outside my office. It's been revealed to me that you don't actually have to employ discipline like all the time. It's a way to get from point A to point B, and it works, but discipline can be very taxing. And I think when it comes to manifesting things, there are a million different ways to get the desired end result to manifest. And manifesting discipline is something that can be done, and discipline will get you there. So what I'm trying to say is, I think for a lot of people for whom simply following the right impulses isn't something that they're able to actually discern, laziness can feel good the same way that the non-resistance to an impulse feels good. Does that make sense? It can be very difficult to tell the difference between those two things. And that's why I think that for people who are not just sailing right towards a goal in some area of their life, developing discipline and achieving that goal through discipline will be incredibly beneficial to you, because you will remember what it felt like when you weren't successful. You will remember what it felt like when you were successful. And thanks to having accomplished something via discipline, you will know the difference between when you're just not doing something because you don't wanna, and when you're not doing something because it is an unnecessarily when you're not doing something because it is not the ideal route to something. It's not the way that exists that involves no resistance on your part. God, dude, I really don't know if any of this is making any sense. I'm really trying to articulate it. But this has been very interesting over the last few months for me, because this big problem area of my life, I am certain that there is no way I could have done what I'm doing right now 5 years ago. There's just not. There was too much mental garbage in there. I don't know how this could have happened any other way, because of this process that it involved. It was a very step-by-step, everything that's happened makes sense. It happened so naturally you think it would have happened anyway, right? I have an idea in my mind about the importance of something. I'm not successful at it. It turns out that it's because I don't really see myself, I think I'm cursed. I think it's just not for me, or I don't deserve it, or whatever. A bunch of garbage, nonsense beliefs. Those get out of the way, right? And then through discipline, the end is achieved. Turns out that the end that was achieved doesn't provide the benefit that was expected. So kind of back to the drawing board. You know what I mean? Achieve, redefine. That's basically make something happen, figure out what worked and didn't work about it, redefine what you want, re-intend, and then it comes about. So it all seems like a very natural process. I don't know how this would have happened initially. And it's kind of the same for my business having manifested, except that I had so many fewer, what the hell, how do you articulate that? I had fewer negative ideas about, I had fewer expectations from it. I didn't think it was going to do so much for me that it couldn't do, and I didn't have a whole bunch of ideas about what it needed to be, or how it needed to be, or how it needed to come about. My whole sense of self-worth wasn't riding on it. So all that garbage being taken off of it, there was some discipline involved there that I'm not even sure was really necessary, but most of it was just kind of gliding easily towards the outcome, which is what's happening for me now with everything having to do with my body and everything having to do with the mentality surrounding it. I don't want to talk too much about what's actually happening right now, because I just want to let it happen. But it's amazing how easily things are working themselves out mentally and physically now. And what's also really mind-blowing to me about it is a few events completely out of my control that have, nothing I could say I directly made this happen. Some events have shown up in a very timely fashion to sort of bring a few things up that have then worked out and moved me forward. And the timing is what's just mind-blowing. It's like they showed up. It's like it was time for them to show up, and so they did. That's what's really crazy about this whole manifesting thing for me. It's how stuff like that happens. Like how a family event shows up that requires me to get over something in order to move forward, at just the right time, where my mind's on this and I'm thinking about it and I'm moving through this process, from a place of being aware that it's happening. And then this, like, the next step just shows up with the timing perfect and at just the right level of difficulty. It's not pushing me so far outside of my comfort zone that I just say, oh, well, fuck it. I'm not even going to, I'm not going to touch that. It's this perfect thing. It's like, here's your next challenge and you can achieve it. You can accomplish this. It's fucking amazing. I don't know. If you become aware of what's going on in your life, I promise your mind is going to be blown over and over and over again. So many people are living their lives so unaware that these things are happening and how perfectly they're happening. And it's really crazy. But so I just wanted to talk through this a little bit because as I'm going through this now, I'm just thinking, there are days where I haven't, plan for what I'm going to do that day. And I go to do step one and I don't want to do it. And without having had a lot of experience with not wanting to do something and then doing it anyway, it would be very difficult for me to know the difference between I don't want to do this because I'm lazy and I don't want to do this because it's not the right thing for me to do today. There's a difference between those two things, for sure. And it's a very small difference a lot of the time. A lot of the time there's some old impulse to just revert back to what's familiar and not take a step that will actually get you where you're trying to go. And then there are times where you legitimately have a better option, and the only way that you would know which one that is by having a little experience, knowing when you're just being lazy. Man, this is a really nuanced one. I'm struggling with it myself, and I swear to God, I am probably the most observant person about this stuff in the world. I'm always looking at things and trying to suss out what's going on. It's just my personal pleasure to do that. It's just my personal interest to sort of try to figure these things out. But it can be very difficult. So the whole point of this is, I think there is a very important role for developing self-discipline in this whole process, especially for people who are not successful. If you don't feel like, I think a lot of people come to the manifestation community because they are just completely failing in one or more areas of their life. From my personal exposure to people in this community, which is mainly Reddit, we're not talking about super successful individuals. We're not talking about super mature individuals. We're not talking about people most of the time who have a lot of life experience or anything like that. And so this video is just to say that while forcing yourself to do things is pretty much, I think, the antithesis of the manifesting concept. Discipline, which is definitely, I'm doing this even though I don't want to, which you could, I guess, classify as, sometimes forcing yourself to do something you don't want to. That is part of self-mastery, which absolutely, is a core of manifestation. And it's not something that you have to do forever. Just being able to say, I know that I can do whatever I've decided to do, even if I don't want to do it. That alone gives you, I think, the ability to start to separate out impulses that are leading you effortlessly without having to force yourself to things. To be able to discern when that's happening and when you're still just sort of existing in the state of an unsuccessful person. You are welcome for this video that helps no one. It helped me. So I guess I'll just leave it at that, and have a great day.